Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shanti. Is she singing? Shh. Okay. We're going to start back on text 33 and then wrap up the chapter. Text 33, I think the verse is quite profound. I think the idea contained in it is quite profound. Shreyan Dravya Mayat Yagyat Jnana Yagya Parantapa. Can you do me a favor and let them know, just to be quiet? Thank you. Quickly. The verse says that Jnana Yagya is better than Dravya Maya Yagya. Dravya means things. Dravya Maya means composed of things. Dravya Maya Yagya means the yagya or the sacrifice composed of stuff. Shreyan, better than that, is Jnana Maya Yagya. Better than Dravya Maya Yagya is Jnana Maya Yagya. So the yagya or sacrifice composed of knowledge, or just ask them to, just let them know that we're still hearing it. Thank you. No, just let them know. Thank you. The sacrifice in knowledge, or the sacrifice of knowledge, the sacrifice consisting of knowledge, is better than the sacrifice that merely consists of things. So, just to say it in real simple English, it's not just the act of giving stuff up, but it's the consciousness with which you do that. This is and then the back half of the verse gives a reason why. Sarvam karmam akilam partha jnane parisamapyate. Parisamapyate means it's like achieved. What's achieved? Sarva karma akilam. The complete performance of action is achieved when it's done in knowledge. Jnana means in knowledge. So when you do the right thing for the right reason, then you've done the right thing. But doing the right thing for the wrong reason is not the same. Does that make sense? For instance, you could be a drunk driver, driving drunk, a danger to yourself and others, and you could accidentally run over a murderer who was fleeing from the police and stop them. Or, we could make it even better. You could run over someone who was chasing a child and was going to kill the child if you didn't run over them, and you as a drunk driver could accidentally run over that person. There might be some appreciation by the parents of that kid or whatever, because their kid got saved, and so they got the result they wanted. But accidentally, like in almost like a Pink Panther or Forrest Gump-esque manner, or Homer Simpson-esque manner, happening in your buffoonery and your foolishness and your ignorance to do the right thing doesn't get you the same appreciation. I mean, it would if somebody was a pure utilitarianist. If you only believed in like that nothing else mattered but the ends, then you could say this. But then if nothing else mattered but the ends, you could justify potentially torturing one person forever to stop the death of many people in their lifetime, to stop the suffering of many people. You could make the ends justifies the means argument for doing almost anything. So you could say, hey, there's more suffering if millions of people suffer somewhat than if just one person suffers forever. So from a purely utilitarian point of view, the equation becomes obvious. 5 people get run over instead of 10 people, 10 people instead of 20 people, 20 people instead of 40 people. One guy suffers a bunch instead of everybody suffering a little bit. You could add it all up, quantify it, and you could justify anything, either to increase pleasure or to decrease pain. There's positive and negative utilitarianism. And so you could start to justify anything. You could justify dropping a bomb, an atomic bomb, because it's going to stop further suffering and the amount of casualties is going to be less. And so you can start to justify all sorts of things. But then there's this sort of virtue component and what's the right thing to do, and are those people innocent? And that starts to get factored into the equation. And now you're no longer dealing with pure utilitarianism. You're dealing with a much more complicated moral compass, a much more complicated ethical system, where you're weighing in virtue, what's fair, what's the other person's karma, what's the natural consequences, what's the appropriate intervention, what's inappropriate intervention, what's the appropriate act. In a pure act-based ethic, you could say, hey, I did the right thing. So even though the result was awful, I did the right thing. I told the truth. Somebody came in, they said, where is this person? I want to kill them. I said, oh, they're right over there. And I told the truth. And so I always tell the truth in every circumstance. I don't care what the consequences are. A pure acts-based ethic, where you don't care what the consequences are at all, or a pure results-based ethic, where all you care about is the results, either one of these has some pretty serious deficiencies. Either one of these has some pretty serious deficiencies. So what we're being told here is that if you're doing the right thing for the right reason, that's really acting properly. And just after Krishna surveyed about a dozen different ways that people approach him, in the Vedic topography and the kind of Vedic spiritual landscape, people had various things they did, from pranayam to observing various austerities or vrats, vows, or what have you. We surveyed them last week. And there was about half a dozen verses that went over any number of different ways in which people approach God, and they were all called yajnas, or ways of sacrificing or connecting with something bigger than yourself. And Krishna said all of them have some value. But what really matters is the reason why you do them. That's what really matters. And to do it with the proper consciousness. So I think this verse is powerful. I think the verse is, like if somebody was to give money to a church because they wanted to win a contract for their business, and the guy they were trying to win a contract from went to that church. They figured they'd go to church, give money, and then they get that contract. And they were an atheist. They couldn't care less about anything. And they went and gave money to church solely for the purpose of getting something out of it. And you will compare that to somebody who came to the church and gave money to the church just because they wanted to help other people and do something good. They're two very different things. Right? Would you agree with that? Yeah. Or, someone who was coming to vandalize your store. And as they were coming to vandalize your store and commit a crime, or even somebody's coming to rape somebody, something really heinous, but they happened to interrupt a bank robbery, or they happened to interrupt some worse crime that was going on while they were committing a lesser crime. Maybe they interrupted rape in order to commit a murder in order to commit a rape. Are you going to give that person a medal? You follow? From a purely utilitarian point of view, it wouldn't matter what the reasoning was or what the purpose was behind it. You follow? A child molester grooming a child could buy them a gift. If he didn't get around to actually doing something and just groomed them and bought them a gift, that would be equivalent to a parent buying a gift for a child out of love. How's that one for a skin-crawling example? So Krishna's making, I think, like a very powerful, very pragmatic, very perennial argument that makes a lot of sense and is part of, any serious treatment of the subject of how should I act. It starts to get into why should I act and what's the mood in which I should act in. And there's a cognitive component. And in fact, when you try to do pure behaviorism, even in psychology, when you tried pure behaviorism failed miserably. There was a time in the 40s and 50s where they didn't care what people were thinking. All they cared about was getting people to do the right thing. Are you familiar with the history of modern psychology, Shri? Behaviorism was all the rage in the 40s and 50s with Skinner et al. And they had this nifty idea that it just didn't matter what your mind was. It just mattered if they could control your behavior. This was satirically treated in the movie A Clockwork Orange. A Clockwork Orange, I can't remember what it was called. But I think it's a Stanley Kubrick film. And so in the 70s. Anyway, there was a rapist, horrible human being, and he was sent to some kind of a penitentiary. And in that place, he was forced, his eyelids were held open. He was forced to watch horrible stuff. That was designed to traumatize him, so in order to evoke a nauseating reaction whenever he would try to commit a crime. So he would try to commit a crime and he would become nauseous. Krishna talks about this. He says you can control your senses. Vishaya vinivartante. You can turn away from the senses and their objects. So you can stop engaging in sinful activities. Vishaya vinivartante. Nir aharasya dehina. Somebody's in a body can fast. Nirahar means to fast. So that's where you get the term pratyahar from. It's the same thing in the fifth of the yogangas. Pratyahar, nirahar. Ahar means to eat. Nirahar means not to eat, to fast. Niraharasya dehinaha. Somebody who's embodied, they have a deha. They're called dehi. They possess a body. So an embodied soul can vinivartante, they can turn away from vishaya, enjoyment, niraharasya, by fasting. The fasting embodied soul can turn away from sense enjoyment. Rasa varjam, except for the taste. They can't give up the taste. So anyway, what happened in this movie Clockwork Orange is the criminal, he suffered. He tried to commit crimes unsuccessfully because he kept vomiting and having allergic reactions to committing crimes. But eventually he rehabilitated himself and was able to commit crimes again the way he used to before he got caught. There's a modern variation of this. It's called it's for gay people who want to become straight. Sponsored by evangelical right-wing churches It's called conversion therapy. Conversion therapy. They're going to convert you from being gay to being straight. It's failed miserably. Now, I don't mean that gay people can't live a straight life. There are a bunch of really pious Christians and even Hindus, and their value system is such that they're supposed to get married to a woman and have kids, and that's the program in their church or in their theology. And they're so devoted, they just decide, hey, although I'm attracted this way, my church says I should live my life this way, and I'm just going to go ahead and do that. I know any number of Hare Krishna devotees who are gay, but they're not that sexual. Sex and bodily gratification isn't that important to them. And so either they're celibate monks and they just decide to kind of just walk away from the whole thing, or they get married and have a family even though they're not gay. We hear about this in the U.S. and we're like, oh my God, that's so terrible, you poor soul. That's because we value sex enjoyment above all things. And so if you can't enjoy yourself sexually in the exact way you want to, provided it's not illegal and it doesn't hurt children, or it's not abusive or something like that, it's consensual amongst two adults, and your pursuit of happiness, the third of the virtues of the Constitution, does not compromise, the rights of the Constitution, does not compromise the life and liberty of another, which pedophilia or rape or so many things would. Provided you don't compromise the life and liberty of another, and it's consensual, then let two adults do whatever they want to do in the confines of their own home, and what does it matter? We, especially like in the left wing in the modern day, anything other than that position immediately labels you some kind of outdated Neanderthal. But it's based on the premise that enjoying sex is a super important thing that everybody has to do with gusto. And if you're not regularly engaged in sex, and really enjoying yourself, then there's something horribly wrong in your life because you're being denied a necessity like air or water or food. Isn't it? Right? I don't see any good reason why sex has to be on par with basic bodily necessities like air and water and food. I was completely celibate for 10 years. It was good. It was great. I was happy. It wasn't easy, but by Krishna's grace, I pulled it off. 10 straight years. Never fell down. It was good. Then I got married. I think one of the reasons why I'm successful in my marriage is because I was a good brahmachari, by Krishna's grace, by the good training of my elders. So, you can turn away from something which is you determine is not good for you. Now, I'm not saying that the problem with the anti-gay rhetoric is that nobody chooses to be straight. Nobody makes a choice. I'm going to be heterosexual. It just comes naturally to you. And if heterosexuality comes naturally to people, then we can just go ahead and be generous and extend the same courtesy to people who aren't heterosexual. And we can just, with even just kind of casual observation or just taking people at their words, it really seems like homosexuality is innate in human society. It's not in animal society. There are no animals which are exclusively homosexual in nature. Nobody likes to admit this. but you can Google it. There's homosexual activity in nature all over the place. But there are no preferential, exclusive homosexuals in nature. The only exception is domesticated sheep, and it's 10% domesticated sheep. But they're domesticated, and so it doesn't count. Because that's not au natural. Nonetheless, humans are unusual in any number of ways. We wear clothes and make fire and build houses and have air conditioning and write books and sing songs and do all sorts of stuff that animals don't do. Play instruments, maybe sing songs, whales do. But for the most part, I mean, in many ways, human beings, in hundreds and thousands of ways, we are absolutely unique in the animal kingdom. Another way that human beings are absolutely unique is some portion of our population, 3 to 7%, according to most estimates, are homosexual. They're preferential homosexual. They report no attraction to the opposite sex, and in fact, they have full attraction to the same sex. It's a funky phenomenon in human society. It just is what it is. And so we can be courteous to gay people and just accept when they tell us that they've never been attracted to the same sex and take them at their word. And in the same way that conversion therapy to becoming gay, if you were straight, would fail miserably, conversion therapy, if you're gay to become straight, also fails miserably. And it's so if people want to live, if they're a little asexual, if they're not super sensual, if they're really devout, and they want to live in accordance with the values of their church, and the values of their church are that they shouldn't engage in homosexual behavior, then what's the problem? Go ahead and be straight functionally. But attempts to force someone who is sensual and does want to pursue that lifestyle, but they're kind of like tore up, and so they go to conversion therapy hoping that they're going to like wake up one day and be straight. It doesn't happen. It's way more visceral than that. It's way more natural than that. It's way more impulse than that. It's way more nature versus nurture. It's hardwired in by the time you hit puberty. And so maybe people go from being bisexual to being heterosexual, or bisexual to being homosexual, something like that. Or maybe they go from being heterosexual and they kind of like edge over into bisexual a little bit. But if you go with that scale, I can't remember what the guy's name was, but the 1 to 6 scale, where 1 is exclusively heterosexual and 6 is exclusively homosexual. If you take people who are like in that 1 and 6, they don't switch. You can forcibly turn away from sense gratification, but you won't be able to give up the taste. Rasa api asya param dristva nivartate. But if you see something higher, then you can even give up that taste. And we see this. I know many monks in our tradition who were either gay or straight in their earlier life, but because of intense Krishna consciousness, intense spiritual practice, they gave up sexuality kind of in its entirety. Maybe they still like to play music or something like that. They might still like poetry or something like that. They might still have some very refined, sublimated sensual pursuits, classical music or poetry or something like that. But for all intents and purposes, they've given up the lower taste entirely. And they got 40, 50 years or even a whole lifetime of celibacy under their belt. That's just not part of their makeup anymore. They transcended it. So, Krishna's making the point that you can do the right thing, but when you do the right thing for the right reason, it's infinitely more powerful. The Jnana Yajna is Shreyan, is better than Dravya Maya Yajna, than the sacrifice of mere material things. Why? Because then the karma is done properly, your action is done properly when you've got the right mindset behind it. And that's why behavioral therapy failed. It failed in the Clockwork Orange. It failed in the modern day in conversion therapy, which is really a Clockwork Orange played out in the real lives of thousands of people over the last few decades by right-wing evangelical churches. And the same way Skinner failed, and they had to give way to cognitive behavioral therapy, where there's both a cognitive as well as a behavioral component to helping somebody to learn to see the world differently, as well as changing their behavior. And those things together provide a very powerful recipe for success in changing your life. And what really has to happen is you have to upgrade param dristva, having seen something higher, then nivartante, then you cease from even the taste. Then there's no possibility of falling down. What do you got going on here, man? Chillax. Just be in class. I'm being videoed all over the place. I don't like the 4 people who are here videoing me as well. So Krishna's making a very compelling argument that there's a cognitive component, in this case knowledge. Now it's interesting, well, you could say, well, why can't you cognitively convert to heterosexuality? Because you upgrade. It's not a lateral move. You have to see something higher. And so the way to cure homosexuality, if that's what you want to do, is the same way you cure somebody of heterosexuality. You make them, I want to say transsexual, but the word transsexual has been coined by the transgender community. So you make, and I don't want to say asexual, because asexual usually is like a deficit, like you just kind of have nothing going on. And so you transcend sexuality. You become functionally asexual. You don't move from one sex to another, but you actually transcend the whole thing. That's why conversion therapy doesn't work. You're not going to make somebody lusty for the opposite sex when they're hardwired to be lusty towards the same sex, or vice versa. Even when you see people like in prison, it's very common in prisons in the world that heterosexual men will engage in homosexual behavior because there's a lack of viable female candidates around. Happens all the time. But then when they go back out into a situation where they have access to females, they go back down to preferential heterosexuality. You also find that in the animal kingdom as well. And so what people miss with the conversion therapy, and even with behavioral therapy in general, is that you don't just convert from one way of doing things. Hey, what's happening? We're closed. We're just online. They're just here to help me record.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know. I just saw the door open. I've always wanted to look in here.
Thanks, man. Thanks for looking in. Thank you. You too, man. All good. What people miss is you don't convert somebody through behaviorism from one addiction to another. If you really want to heal somebody from some behavior that's not working, you have to give them something higher. Skinner actually found out that when the pain of doing something, if you want to motivate people, you make doing the thing they want to do painful enough that they give it up. But they only give it up till it stops being painful. You follow? So if every time somebody was to do some unwanted behavior, like, I don't know, lie, and then you stab them, then they're going to lie less because you've made it so painful. They do this with rats. They take rats, they have rats go and get food, but then they make the area that the rats have to go over here, and then they get a food pellet, and they go back over here and get another food pellet, and back over here and get a food pellet, but then they heat up the distance between them so it gets hot and it burns them, and eventually the rats will stop going to get food or water. If they give the rats cocaine and they teach the rats there's cocaine over here and cocaine over here and they got to walk across, then the rats actually kill themselves. They'll walk across that hot plate until they burn to death and die. Cocaine, they were able to, it was like the pain of death wouldn't even stop them. And you see that actually, cocaine is the most addictive drug around. The come down from cocaine is legendary. Because anyway, there's a whole reason why. So, for the most part, with that one exception, if you want somebody to modify their behavior, you make continuing that behavior so painful that it becomes less painful to give it up and change. You follow? But that's provided that's the natural consequences of the behavior. If it's artificial consequences which are enforced, then as soon as they're removed, the person will go back to where they were normally. Does that make sense? But there is a cure. You can give somebody a higher taste. You can give somebody something which is categorically superior. And then they don't ever go back. And that's why the sacrifice in knowledge is better than the sacrifice of mere possessions. You can go the other way, and you can get, people who just have knowledge but don't do anything. That's like faith but no works. James critiques this in chapter 2 of the New Testament. He says faith without works is dead. We say it when we say practice what you preach. Example is better than precept. Your actions speak so loud I can't hear what you're saying. Put up or shut up. Walk your talk. We have all sorts of pithy colloquialisms in American English that express this sentiment. It's even there in the New Testament. And in a lot of ways, that's what's going on in the Gita right now. We had buddhi and sankhya, which was the idea that you're not the body, and then we have what you're supposed to do with that information, which is yoga or buddhi yoga or karma yoga. We then, what if you can't get rid of your desire? Well, then do it for the right reason. Well, then do it for the wrong reason, but at least attach yourself to something higher. What's that called? When you do it for your own enjoyment, but you at least attach yourself to something higher than you, and you become regulating your activity? Were all of you spacing out? Man, it's like depressing. Darshan, can you answer the question? Darshan, I'm asking a question. Did you not hear me? Can you not unmute yourself? Okay, you're up, Darshan. What's your answer? No, it's not called karma yoga. You typed your answer in? No. Let me ask the question again. I'm going to get super depressed if you guys can't all answer it. If you know you're not the body, it's called Sankhya, according to Krishna himself. Eshate Bhita Sankhya. If you then use Sankhya to do your duty without being attached, that's called Buddhi Yoga. Buddhi Yoga Tatshanu. It's also called Yoga. Yoga Stakur Karmani. Yoga Karmasu Koshalam. Then Krishna evolves that. He talks about the Jnana Yoga of the Sankhyas. Jnana Yogena Sankhyanam, and the Karma Yoga of the yogis. Karma Yogena Yoginam. And he calls it Sankhya Yoga and Karma Yoga. Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga. But then he tackles Arjuna's problem, in that Arjuna is not ready to do things selflessly, which is the hallmark of Buddhi Yoga. You realize you're not the body. So what do you call it when you are attached and you want a particular result? You are not detached. But even though you're attached, you do your duty, knowing that it's going to get you what you want, but you do it according to a higher regulation coming from the scriptures, and you live a life where you do something, you do your duty, but you do it in a way which is regulated according to a higher body of information, in this case the scriptures. No, Laura, that's not bhakti. Bhakti is motivated by love for God, which this is not. What's that called, Dave Darshan? Does somebody else comment? Has somebody else typed? Dovetailing. That's English. That's nice. Dovetailing is a term that's used from carpentry, old world tongue and groove carpentry. And you dovetail the way cabinetry and such will fit together. So it's a tongue and groove style, so that two pieces become one, and you kind of join two things together, and it becomes strong. Anyway, that's the etymology of dovetailing. And it mirrors the way you see a dove's tail, which appears to be one and then becomes two. No, that's English. I'm looking for the Sanskrit term. What's the Sanskrit term? It's what? No. The term is, and I'm really underwhelmed with you guys as students, and I guess with myself as a teacher. The term is yajna. It was elaborately described in the 3rd chapter. And Krishna said that, by doing this yajna, you'll prosper and you'll enjoy. And it connects you to akshara, to the infinite, through the scriptures. And that's a way of living a life even before you give up your material desires, which is not mere wanton pursuing of sense gratification. I lectured for weeks on this in the 3rd chapter, just relatively recently. Most of you were here for it. I'm incredibly disappointed that your memory is so weak that you can't even remember. As a teacher, you want to find students who are intelligent enough to follow what you're saying, so that you can actually explain things that you can give what you have. But sometimes I feel with you guys like I'm talking to a bunch of 2nd graders, and I have to keep going over like CAT because you don't possess the mental fortitude or honestly purity of consciousness to just be able to focus your minds on Krishna. Okay, we're going to get back to it now. In the same way that we can look at cognitive behavioral therapy and we can see the history of therapy amongst human beings and the mental component and the physical component and how those things work together in harmony. We can also see within Christianity this idea of faith and works, that you should have faith in God and then you should also do the right thing. We find this marriage between thought and action all over the place in a number of different iterations in every field of human endeavor. Faith and work. You can find it in orthodoxy vis-a-vis orthopraxy in the systematic study of religion, where you should have the proper belief and then you should have the proper practice. And those two things together comprise a religion. You find that in Sankhya and Yoga in the 2nd chapter, in Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga in the 3rd chapter, in Buddha Yoga versus Yajna, again in the 3rd chapter. You'll find it in the next chapter, in Sannyas and Yoga. You'll find it in the 18th chapter under the name Tyag and Sannyas. And you find Krishna takes any number of different terms in the Vedic lexicon, in the Sanskrit lexicon that was popular in the Vedic time, and he tries to explain to you how to walk a razor's edge between knowing the right thing, having the right motivation, having the right mindset, and also doing the right thing. I even showed it to you from an ethical point of view, as the marriage between utilitarianism and deontology, and acts-based versus a results-based ethics. And we find Krishna touching on the same thing here. On one hand, if you just do the right thing, but you don't do it for the right reason, it's dicey. You probably won't be able to hold on to doing the right thing. It won't have its transformative effect on you. It won't do as good for the world. Tadeo, did you know the answer to my question? Did you know the answer was Yajna? I can't hear you, and they ruined my ability to navigate this system. I don't know why. Let me see if I can unmute you. Okay. I think I just unmuted you. Did I?
Okay.
Can you talk? Let me hear you. No, I muted him. Okay. Let me unmute you.
He's unmuted.
I'm told you're unmuted now. Can you talk? You can hear him, but I can't. Okay? So they haven't given me a proper speaker to hear you. Hang on a second. Now you disappeared, or somebody disappeared. Why did you do that?
He's trying to get unplugged the speaker.
What have you done? You just unplugged my video. Okay. You can type in your answer today. I apologize, I can't hear you. Did you know the answer to my question about Yajna? Were you here for that? Are you typing your answer? I can't.
Yes.
Oh, now I can hear you. When I asked that question, did you know the answer?
No, Prabhu. I was also thinking karma yoga.
All right. Maybe I asked the question poorly. Or maybe you guys don't get it. Yajna, as it's defined in the 3rd chapter of the Gita, differs from yoga, including karma yoga, in that it's done with material desire. We sometimes call it sakam karma yoga, karma yoga with desire versus nishkam karma yoga, karma yoga without material desires. But those are terms used by our acharyas in the last 4 centuries. Those aren't the terms used by Krishna in the Gita. When you look at the phenomenon as it's articulated in the Gita, it's really Yajna, which is introduced in the 3rd chapter. You want to respond?
It's clear now.
Okay. All right. So, Krishna is trying to walk a razor's edge. And he's trying to explain this fine balance between a proper understanding of reality and proper action. Now, if you just do the right thing, you become a ritualist. And if you just know the right thing, then you become antinomian, which means you think you can do anything. There is a variation of this in Christianity today that's popular, where if you pray to Jesus and accept Jesus in your heart, then that's it. You can go and do any damn nonsense and you're covered. I'm not saying that's there's a powerful voice in the Bible in the form of James, and he argues pretty vehemently against Paul, who sort of espouses this antinomian thing. But I'm not saying this is traditional Christianity. I am saying that it's quite a popular variational interpretation of Christianity nowadays, where it doesn't matter what you do as long as you said the words, I accept Jesus as my Lord and Savior. That is called antinomianism. That you can do anything, and it doesn't matter what sins you might commit, you're covered. The Branch Davidian, David Koresh and the Branch Davidians, they got into a bit of this in the early 90s. It resulted in a massive shootout in Waco, Texas. So on one hand, if you go too far off the razor's edge on the side of just doing your duty, you become a ritualist and you're doing the right thing but for the wrong reasons. On the other side, if you just focus on the right reasons but you don't do the right act, then you fall off the cliff this way and you become antinomian. And you can do anything, get away with any damn nonsense. And it's really the degradation of religion. Sinful people start professing themselves to be accomplished in religion because they know the right thing or they said the right thing. And you don't find it, it's faith without works is dead, is the way James puts it. Faith without works is dead. So if you know how to look, you find these two sides and the attempt to navigate a course between them all over the place. In psychology, in ethics, in spirituality, in world religion. In relationships. You're doing the right thing all the time, but your heart's not in it. Or you say your heart's in it, you say the nice things, but you don't actually do the right thing. In every field of life, you find this at play. And so Krishna's statement here is powerful. He's saying that don't think by doing it all perfectly, it's perfect. When your heart's in the right place and you're doing the right thing for the right reason, then that's perfect. Shreyan Dravya Maya Yagyat. Better than a sacrifice of things, Jnana Yagya Parantapa, is the sacrifice done with proper knowledge. And now Krishna has built us all the way back. And see, to even appreciate this verse properly, you guys might have thought I was just on a kick, but to even appreciate this verse properly, you have to understand what happened. Krishna said to Arjuna, you're not the body. Then he said to him, do your duty but don't be attached to the results. Then Arjuna said, I can't do that. And Krishna said, okay, do your duty and be attached to the results. But at least be regulated by something higher. What's that called? That's called yajna. Sankhya Yoga Yajna. And now Krishna just built us all the way back to doing your duty without attachment to the results with the proper conception. It took him a chapter and a half from Arjuna's doubt in the 3rd chapter, where he said he couldn't deal with both. He couldn't put the two things together. He couldn't walk and chew gum. Tadekamba, just tell me one thing. He did tell him one thing, and he went about it again over another chapter and a half, and we got back to the same place where you're doing the right thing for the right reasons. Did you follow that? Did you follow that? Did you follow that? Do you understand? If you don't understand what happened in the 3rd chapter and how yajna differs from yoga, then you don't appreciate that Krishna just got us back to where we need to be by taking a little side trip to go through what we needed to go through to get back here. Tadeo, did you follow me? And then he says, Tadviti, know this. Know what? What I just taught you. Pranipatena, by falling on the ground. Pariprashnena, by asking questions. Sevaya, by doing service. Upadekshanti te jnanam. They will show you knowledge. Who will? Jnaninas, the knowers. Tattvadarshana, the seers of the truth. The knowers, the seers of the truth. They will show you knowledge. They'll enlighten you. If you approach them, pranipat, falling on the ground. Pat means to fall. Patanjali, the offering that fell down to earth. Pranipat. Pranipat. Ni means down. Pat means fall. Pra means especially. Pranipatena, by laying down on the ground. Pranipat means dandavat, means laying down on the ground like a stick, like we do when we come in the temple. By laying down on the ground, meaning by prostrating yourself in front of a teacher. That doesn't just mean the physical act, but it means that mindset, that submissive mindset, that receptive mindset. Prabhupada says brilliantly in his purport, both blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned. Absurd inquiries, just asking questions for questions' sake without any purpose, and blind following. Unnecessary doubt on one side, and blind faith on the other. Both condemned. Again, walking that fine line. Receptivity, questions, service. And so the principle of guru gets introduced. What's the result? Yat knowing this. Napunar moham. Yasyasi. You will never again fall into illusion. Yena bhutani asheshena. Drakshasi. You will see all beings, atmani, within the self, atamai, and within me. You'll see how the whole world is connected to God. Spirituality. The sacrifice performed in knowledge is better than the sacrifice of material possessions. After all sacrifice of work culminate in transcendental knowledge. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively. Render service to him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they've seen the truth. Having attained real knowledge from a self-realized soul, you will never fall again into such illusion. For by this knowledge, you will see that all living beings are but part of the Supreme, or in other words, they are mine. Apichet asi papebhya savebhya papakritamaha. Even if you are the greatest sinner amongst sinners. Sarvagyana plavena, by the boat of knowledge. Vidrinam santarishasi, you will cross over wickedness. How powerful is this knowledge? It'll transform and metamorphosize. It'll metamorphosize your life. It'll transform your life. It's cathartic. Real knowledge is functional. It changes the world in which you live. It changes the way you live your life. It changes the way you move. You approach a teacher properly with the right attitude. You give your attention. You ask relevant questions. You do service. You be respectful. You approach the right people who are walking their talk, who have learned this art of completing their actions in this world by doing them with the right mindset. And you go to those people and you learn that from them through osmosis. Those people have seen the truth and they bequeath to you their wisdom, and you listen to it and you carefully cultivate it in your own life. The result is that you'll never again fall into illusion, and you'll be able to look at this world and see how it's all connected. And even if previously in your life you did the worst thing, you're papa kritama, you're the greatest performer since sarva papebhya, of all sinful people, you're the greatest sinner. Jnana plavena, by the boat of knowledge, santarishasi, you will cross over that darkness. Even if you are considered to be the most sinful of all sinners, when you're situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you'll be able to cross over the ocean of miseries. And the wisdom which is being taught is how to walk and chew gum, how to do your duty but be unattached to the results, how to have the proper mindset while also doing your duty, how to fight in a battle and at the same time not lose yourself in bloodlust, how to upgrade, how to not be at the same level and just move from lusting after this to lusting after that. Not that, but how to actually upgrade and take it to the next level. Not conversion therapy. Transcendent therapy. Transpersonal psychology. Are you guys following? As a blazing fire turns firewood to ashes. Even if you're considered to be the most sinful of all sinners, when you're situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you'll be able to cross over the ocean of miseries. As blazing fire turns firewood to ashes, so does the fire of knowledge burn to ashes all reaction. So it takes away all your karma. That fire of knowledge purifies you. Krishna gives like a really nice simile to help you understand how powerful knowledge is in terms of as a transformer. In this world, there's nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is a mature fruit of all mysticism, and one who has become accomplished in the practice of devotional service enjoys this knowledge within himself in due course of time. Kalena atmani vindati, you find this knowledge within yourself. It's not even something external to yourself. It's an interesting mix. You're being told to go and fall down and beg this knowledge from gurus, but you're also told that you'll find this knowledge within yourself. Atmani means within the self. Vindati, you will find this knowledge within the self. Kalena, in due course of time. Nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitram iha vidyate. You won't find anything in this world more purifying than knowledge. Know the truth, for it shall set you free. Not in an antinomian way where you know the right thing and you're no longer responsible to do the right thing. In a way where you know the right thing and you actually start to live a different life. You can't go back. You've seen too much. You can't go back. Not like a clockwork orange, not like conversion therapy, but you actually upgrade to a higher level. And param drishva nivartate, you can like walk away from sinful life, from a degraded life of exploitation, the same way you walk away from stool every day. No one laments when they pass stool. Oh my gosh, I lost something so dear to me. You just flush the toilet and it's gone. You're happy it's gone. There's an analogy given. The sadhu walks away from his previous karma, his attachments, the same way someone walks away from stool after passing it. You can really let go. A faithful, how many minutes I got left?
Almost 2.
Huh?
Almost 2.
Almost 2 minutes. All right. I'll have to stop there. The faith versus works thing comes up now. I had a whole way to tie this whole thing together. But that's 4 more verses. I don't think I can do it. I can't honor the verses the way they deserve to be honored. So there you go. Krishna surveyed a number of spirits. Arjuna got confused. He couldn't walk and chew gum. He couldn't hold on to the detachment along with his action. So Krishna dumbed it down and said, do your action attached, but at least be regulated by the scripture. And then he took all the way back around and boom, he jujitsu'd and he got back to the same place again. So you have to do it, but with the right mindset. The right mindset is the detached mindset. And how do you get that? You learn from teachers. And what will they show you? They'll show you how to find out within yourself. It's a beautiful mix of external help and internal realization. It's a beautiful mix of action and knowledge. And if you look around the world, you see the attempt to find this razor's edge in all fields of human endeavor. In a pathology-based and positive-based psychology, where you try to mimic what people are doing and they're happy, as well as getting rid of pathologies. It's in health, when you get rid of diseases, but at the same time you recommend a healthy lifestyle to the person so they can move forward. It's there everywhere. It's the razor's edge. It's what you have to do to get good at anything, and the same thing is true in spirituality. And the thing what you're balancing there is the knowledge that you're not the body, and ultimately that there's a God, with doing your duty in this world, understanding your duty and having the strength and fortitude to do it. Okay, that's it. I'm all done. We good? Thank you, IGTV. You guys can stay on Zoom for a second.